Oh, yes.
Welcome back, everyone. Today we're taking a look at the Masters of the Universe Origins figure Zodac. Zodac is part of the third wave of Origins toys, and is a character that is cause for a lot of confusion and just kind of general mystery, and has been since pretty much the inception of the franchise. Now, one thing I'm very disappointed about is that I bought this toy from a US seller, got it through Amazon, but you can see it's the international version of the packaging. And if you saw my previous Wave 3 reviews, you know that all those were international packaging too, because I got them from Spain. So that's a huge, huge letdown, because not only is the North American packaging just better because it has more on it, it's got the flavor text, that means I don't have a single copy of the Wave 3 comic that actually has any dialogue in it whatsoever. So that just means I'm stuck having no clue what's going on here. So that's a massive shame, and I'm very disappointed this is the version they sent me. But not a huge deal, right? I mostly buy these for the figures, not so much the packaging of the comics. So I'll get over it, but I am very let down about that. Anyway, if you've seen my reviews before, you know how this goes. We're going to take a look at Zodac's packaging, then we'll open it up, we'll see the figure itself, check out the articulation, the accessories, all that fun stuff. Be doing some group shots and comparisons today, and then at the end of the video, I'll give my final thoughts. So Zodac comes in your standard MOTU Origins packaging. However, like I said, this is the international version, so it does lack the title under his name. And then you'll see over here, it lacks the flavor text on his artwork, instead just putting a big obnoxious blurb right there about the mini comic. So I'm not a fan. I get why international packaging exists. It saves money for the toy manufacturer because they don't have to make one package for multiple companies, but it just really hurts the overall quality. And it's something I've griped about in Tformers, and especially when it comes to their reissues, and it bugs me here too, because it's so much is sacrificed to save them just a little bit of money, not having to print separate, prints for these packages. It really kills me. Very anti-consumer, honestly. So, despite the lack of flavor text, the artwork is really nice. You can see He-Man and Skeletor clashing atop some little plateau, and then Zodac, he's just kind of hanging out and observing, because his whole role is to be kind of this preserver of universal balance, right? He's not necessarily a good guy or a bad guy. He'll help out either side depending on what he thinks is best for the cosmos, the universe, and all that. So he's kind of just hanging back and watching how it goes. So I think it's really good artwork helping portray, this character's nature and his allegiance. All right, so here we get our action feature callouts, sans text, but it's pretty obvious. They're telling you to put his blaster in his hand and then the whole twist into battle positions. For our cross-sells, you get your He-Man and your Skeletor. You get She-Ra, Roboto, Zodac, and Merman, who are all the new Wave 3 figures. And, despite the lack of text, it's a nice bit of packaging. Of course, it's kind of bent. I'm starting to wonder if the person I bought this from didn't get this from that Spanish seller and then just resold it, because it looks a lot like those packages I got from that Spanish seller. And here is our disappointingly international version of this comic. So I have no way of ever knowing what's actually said in this thing. But oh well, that's the price I pay for getting into this late. So, this kind of centers around Zodac and his little interdimensional space that he inhabits. You get the good guys getting attacked by Merman and Skeletor via some Kraken monster. Skeletor breaks into this little pocket dimension thing where Zodac hangs out, threatens him, they fight. He's losing, so then He-Man and She-Ra show up. They fight Skeletor. Roboto crushes his little crystal thing that he was using to sow whatever kind of havoc he was trying to sow. And then the good guys win. Zodac bids him farewell with a little shadow of Hordak here in the background. And then here on the back, we just get our standard cross-sells for Wave 3. Now we get to see Zodac himself, and he is an odd-looking character, because ostensibly he's supposed to be human, or, as close to human as Eternians get, but he also has some rather inhuman features. And that comes about from him having a body that's a mixture of Beastman with Skeletor. So for Beastman, we get the torso area. It's very hairy. Now that, in of itself, sometimes guys are just hairy, but This is a very thick coat, and looks more like fur than anything. And then he gets Skeletor's limbs, so he gets the weird forearm crest things, he gets the claws on his fingers, and then he gets the 3-clawed leathery boot things. So I'm not entirely sure what Zodac's supposed to be. Now, I think in the cartoon and most media, he's just portrayed as having just normal human features. I think a lot of his more monstrous features come from the fact that originally Zodac was conceived as an evil warrior. Like, just straight up, he was a bad guy. Which Merman, ironically, was supposed to be a good guy originally, which kind of made more sense to me anyway. I always thought of, mer people as good guys, but, So Zodac was supposed to be a bad guy, which is probably why his toy was designed the way it was. And then eventually they're like, oh, we need more good guys in this lineup, so they switched him over. And that actually led to his status in fiction as being a neutral party. A character who is not really on the side of the good or the heroic or evil warriors. Now, overall, he's generally considered a good guy because he's out there maintaining the balance of the universe and all that. But he has been known to aid Skeletor's side when, it's deemed appropriate. So he's interesting. He's a little in between. Now, for the sake of branding and keeping it simple, he's identified in this toy line as a heroic warrior. But again, he's really more of an observer type, so he is interesting. So we looked at what's old, looking at what's new. Obviously, the completely new head sculpt, which is very helmet-like. And that actually limits the articulation a little bit, because it's on the double ball joint, but you don't get a lot of play because of the helmet going around here at the base of the neck. He gets this new original chest armor, which is pretty neat. Covers that hairy chest of his. And then he gets this kind of goofy-looking laser pistol thing. Probably one of the dinkier weapons I've seen. So, yeah, he's a pretty decent mix of old and new. Now, unfortunately, just like Merman before him, he's not an overly exciting toy when you consider, part counts and accessories. He's pretty much in the same boat. He's a guy with a chest armor and a small weapon. And that's it. He's very simple. He's not decked out in a bunch of stuff. But I do like that they at least didn't completely reuse one character's body type and they mixed and matched a little bit. So you at least get a combination that's inherent to him and, no other characters out there, at least so far. Here's a comparison shot with what I guess you could call his mold mates. And they're both Wave 1 figures. So over here we get Beastman, who lends Zodac his very hairy torso. And then we get Skeletor, who gives him pretty much everything else. Now, I guess if you want to be technical, the loincloth area actually comes from He-Man. But because Skeletor rocks it too, and they both came out simultaneously, I'll just count it as also a part of Skeletor. So yeah, now here you can see, where the inspiration comes from, where the parts come from. He's one of the very few figures to actually use parts from Beastman. It's surprising how few MOTU characters out there have the hairy chest or hairy limbs or anything. And this completes our look at Origin Zodac. Zodac he's a weird character, he really is, because he doesn't fit neatly into a good or bad role, right? He's a neutral party, which you don't see a lot of that in, kids' toy lines, right? He's kind of an outsider. Doesn't show up a lot, he's very obscure. And the figure itself doesn't really do anything special. The most unique thing about him is that he mix and matches Beastman and Skeletor's parts, but other than that, he's kind of in the same league as Merman and maybe someone like Evil End, where he's just a figure with bare minimum accessories. So you're not going to get as much bang for your buck with this guy as you would, say, Roboto or something. Not the end of the world, though. That doesn't make him a bad figure. He's perfectly fine. He's very stable, poses well. Looks cool, too. I mean, he's got an interesting look to him. And, I don't know. I think if you can find him for a decent price, he's worth picking up. But I had to pay over $30 for this toy when it retailed for $15. So nowadays, I don't know if I can recommend him as much if you can't get a good deal on him. Because, again, he's not a super essential character. He barely does anything within the confines of the story, most of the time. And there's not a lot to the figure. So I would say, worth it if you don't overpay for it. Of course, that is just my opinion on Zodac. So now I want to know what you all think. Do you have any attachment to this character? Do you like his design? Maybe you had him as a kid. Maybe you thought he was cool when he ever actually did show up in the show or the comics. Or you're just not interested, or you don't think he's worth the high cost of picking one up, on the secondary market. Any and all feedback is always welcome in the comments section. If you enjoyed this review, make sure to toss it a like. Let YouTube know you want to see more stuff like this. If you do want to see more like this, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you always get a heads up when I post something new. I thank you for joining me for this look at Masters of the Universe Origins Wave 3 figure, Zodac. With all that said, I will see you next time.